We're live on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
All the Facebooks or just one of them?
Oh, no, all of them.
Okay, great. Aloha kako. Aloha.
Yarana.
Yes, here we are having another joyful evening with you. Today, we are going to be doing a tribute to Jean-Claude Teriʻioteraʻi and his book on Tahitian traditional navigation. En français, pas?
Oui, bonsoir tout le monde. Bienvenue à ce webinaire. C'est la 23e épisode. Très, très heureux de vous, d'être là pour vous ce soir. Nous allons avoir un webinaire assez spécial en hommage au Dr. Jean-Claude Teriʻioteraʻi. Et nous allons parler bien sûr de ses recherches, de sa passion un peu sur le réo et bien sûr la navigation traditionnelle. Alors, il y a une petite erreur. Je ne pense pas qu'il a écrit un livre sur la navigation traditionnelle, mais plus un livre sur les étoiles, hein, mais qui sert bien sûr à la navigation traditionnelle. So, just wanted to, just a little correction. So, he doesn't have a book that's actually about traditional navigation, but about stars, of course, and the stars used, of course, for traditional navigation. And so that's just a little, just a little correction.
Correct? That was his dissertation?
Yeah, this is what we're going to be talking about his research and things that I learned from him. I consider him as a mentor as far as learning about our Tahitian skies. And so what I'll be presenting is a lot of his work. And we spent about together 3 weeks working on his presentations and slides in New Caledonia together. And then after that, of course, I used it to spread the knowledge to all our schools and everything like that. Alors, je disais juste que j'ai eu cette occasion de travailler avec Jean-Claude de Teriʻioteraʻi en Nouvelle-Calédonie pendant 3 semaines. Nous étions là-bas dans le projet Te Manao Te Moana. Et lors de ce séjour ensemble, nous avons travaillé bien sûr sur ces présentations, mes traductions en anglais, etc. Et voilà que après, on a pu bien sûr partager ces connaissances avec toutes les écoles que nous avons eu l'occasion de visiter en Nouvelle-Calédonie, mais également à Tahiti et ailleurs. So yeah, so this is a nice little presentation, but more so we would also, I guess, like to share in video, a lot of his, I guess you could say his moments, because he was an expert in the art of oratory art. Yeah, so just an incredible person with a lot of knowledge and I guess this mastery of the Tahitian language. And so, you can do a speech, but then, you can do a speech like Jean-Claude, and that's completely different. And you'll see the whole sense of what it is to do an orero. Alors, je disais bien sûr que non seulement nous allons regarder, étudier un peu les connaissances dans ses recherches de sa thèse, mais également, j'ai mis en place quelques vidéos qui démontrent un peu l'art oratoire. Hein. Jean-Claude était un tia orero, ce qui veut dire un maître de l'art oratoire, et pendant plusieurs années, lors des grandes cérémonies protocolaires avec Haururu et tout, avec également Fapaite Te Aomaohi, il a pu bien sûr nous représenter, hein, quand je dis ça, avec tout ce qui est protocolaire dans l'art oratoire. Et là, nous allons découvrir ça également. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just translating myself.
Yes, no, I think that the video that you have up in Haururu is with Haruru in Papino'o is such a treat. It's from the year 2000, I remember it. And actually, we're going to see some Hawaiians in that video.
Yeah, I think it's a way also to introduce this section to the next part, of course, that we're going to be talking about in more in-depth, which is Matari'i Ni'a, or our ceremonies in Valley of Papineau, the nonprofit organization, cultural organization that I've been a part for the last 10 years, and that Jean-Claude has been a part since its inception. And so one of the leaders, academic leaders in the field of the Tahitian culture and language, contributing, of course, to a lot of the knowledge that we have today, in essence, to be able to share with the next generation of people. Alors, je disais également que les vidéos, parce que Lilikalā avait parlé des vidéos, je vais montrer des vidéos de l'an 2000, 99-2000, où on voit Jean-Claude avec ses orero lors de la visite des Hawaïens. Et puis, Dans cette occasion, bien sûr, c'est également d'en parler de Horuru et la semaine prochaine, on parlera un peu plus des projets de Horuru, mais que Jean-Claude en faisait partie de Horuru pendant plusieurs années, juste depuis le début, et qu'il est bien sûr de Papineau, et qu'il a contribué énormément également sur les connaissances, toutes les recherches qui ont été effectuées par l'association et que nous, aujourd'hui, nous pouvons bien sûr partager, apprendre. En tout cas, voilà, c'est un hommage à cette personne assez exceptionnelle, je pourrais dire, et que voilà, je suis honoré, privilégié de pouvoir faire ça ce soir. And so, once again, I'm honored and I'll do my best to do justice in regards to what he's done for us anyway. And so, as we like to say, us younger generation, we're standing on the shoulders of those who came before us, and all of his research and all of what he's done should be used as a platform for us to continue on, because that's just one part. We have to look multi-generation to bring back all this knowledge to what it is today. Et comme je disais, totalement honoré et privilégié de pouvoir faire de mon mieux et représenter le travail qui a été effectué, que nous tenons sur les épaules de ceux qui sont venus avant nous, et que, hélas, Jean-Claude nous a quittés, mais il nous a laissé énormément de choses que nous devons bien sûr utiliser pour continuer bien sûr à faire les recherches et bien sûr à partager ces connaissances afin que nos Tahitiens, des futures générations, puissent profiter de cela.
Well, Jean-Claude, this way, a really good example of how you could write a dissertation, you could get your PhD on looking at traditional knowledge, and then he took a look at Tahitian traditional navigation. In America, we call the dissertation a book, so that's why I was calling it a book. I know he didn't publish it, or I thought he didn't publish it, but I think his research encourages us to go and do more and more research.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Exactement. Et Lilikalā, le docteur Lilikalā, a dit exactement ce que je disais, que c'est, voilà, les recherches qui sont effectuées, c'est on pourrait dire, une étape de plus, qui doit inciter d'autres personnes à continuer dans cette démarche. Et ce qu'il a fait, la thèse qu'il a écrite, les recherches qu'il a fait pendant plus de 20 ans sur la navigation traditionnelle, dans le cadre de ce que nous avons partagé ce soir, c'est à utiliser, bien sûr, à réfléchir, à comprendre, également à questionner aussi. And of course, with every research, you have to analyze it, you have to look at it all different ways and hopefully gather more information or more new information about it. And that's the whole process, yeah. All right.
Okay, so let's get this show on the road here. While everybody is coming in, we often show your slides. So we show it one time only. Maybe there's one, it's very quick, but it's so beautiful. And I think this is what we need to do more in Hawaii and in Tahiti and everywhere in Polynesia. We need to record what's happening in front of us. Jean-Claude. He's in the sky. Still teaching us. Okay, the one time only. I like to wait. Let's go to the next one. Come on.
Yeah, let's go to the next one.
Let's go to the next one. So this is what we're talking about today. If you friends are lost and you don't know where to go, go to Facebook, Hawaii Nui Akea. You can also go to the bit.ly Brent web. That's our Zoom. So please go there in case you'd happen to be wondering, okay, I'm in here and I'm in. What about my friends? Share this out with everybody. So I always like to begin by including everyone because we have all of our friends from the world. But aloha nahua aloha o mona nui akea. Mai kapi'ina akala ma maunga tea o Rapanui. Akana po ana I kala. Ma te Teriʻioteraʻi o Aotearoa aloha. So aloha to all of our cousins and friends of the Polynesian Triangle, from the rising of the sun in the east at Mauna Teatea, to the setting of the sun in the west, in the sea of Lehua, aloha.
Voilà. Yorana à toutes nos cousins, nos amis du triangle polynésien, de l'est à l'est, sur Mauna Teatea de Rapanui, jusqu'à l'ouest, où le soleil se couche, en la mer de Rehua, Aotearoa, Et comme Lilikalā bien dit, aloha. Et moi, je vous dis yaorana.
Yorana, yay. Oh, and here we are. This is where we live, and we can. Everyone knows me, Lilikalā, already. I'm from Hawaii, but I want you to know that your Hironui, his name, Johan Hironui Bouit, he is our first translator. And this is where he lives. See that? See this right here.
Voilà, alors pour tous ceux qui...
So do things for you. That's what you do. And we'll take you to see all of these countries here that we have on our slide.
Yeah. Alors voilà, comme on a l'habitude de le dire, pour tous ceux qui nous rejoignent pour la première fois, nous sommes deux personnes qui ça fait maintenant 23 épisodes, et que Lilikalā, elle est sur la carte, comme vous voyez, sur l'île de Oahu, dans le district, comme vous voyez, sur la côte nord-est de l'île. Si vous avez déjà été, c'est magnifique. Et moi, je suis de Tahiti, de l'autre côté. Comme vous voyez, je suis ici à Papeete. Et comme avec toutes les personnes qui ont présenté lors de cette série de webinaires, on a l'occasion de visiter vraiment toutes ces îles que vous voyez sur le diapo. En tout cas, bienvenue à tous.
Today, we're going to take you all to this place, Papeno'o, into this valley here, Wharahape, where Jean-Claude will be giving great speeches. We'll start at the mouth of the river at Papeno'o before we go up. This is in the year 2000. Blaine Kia was leading the Hawaiians, and when he found out that my students and I could chant, he said, "Okay, you guys were in the front, you do the chanting." This is when this was first being opened up. Jean-Claude told me there were 300 temples in this valley. 300. And when we got there to go to where the temples were, we had to cross a river. Before there was a bridge, we had to cross the river.
Yeah, you'll see that. Alors voilà, ce soir, nous allons découvrir avec Jean-Claude, tout simplement, la vallée de Papineau. Il est bien sûr un enfant de Papineau. Il faut vraiment bien le citer. Et qu'en l'an 99-2000, je crois, 2000, il a accueilli avec l'association Horuru toute une délégation de Hawaïens, plus de 200 personnes, du bord de mer, en Dimurivaï, jusqu'à dans la vallée de Papineau, jusqu'à Wharehape. Si vous avez déjà été, vous allez découvrir comment était Wharehape il y a plus de 20 ans. Alors c'était l'occasion, bien sûr, de montrer un peu ces images inédites, on pourrait dire, et également de montrer les capacités extraordinaires de Jean-Claude au niveau de l'art oratoire. Et je suis très, très content de pouvoir faire ce petit montage et pour le montrer ce soir.
So, aloha to all of you from Hawaii, Tahiti, Aotearoa, Tonga, Samoa, Kuki, Airangi, Australs, Tuamotu, Marquesas, Rapa Nui, and even from France. And I know we have some coming in from New York today too. So I love all of you, and we're going to have a good time tonight.
Voilà. Alors, encore bienvenue à tous nos amis de Tahiti, de Hawaï, bien sûr, de Aotearoa, de Tonga, Samoa, des îles Cook, des Australes, Tuamotu, les Marquises, Rapa Nui, de la France, des États-Unis, d'Europe, un peu de partout. En tout cas, on vous voit chaque semaine et encore on vous remercie de venir nous voir et bien sûr apprendre avec nous tout ce que nous avons à présenter chaque semaine.
Right. Before we begin our discussion of Polynesian ancestral knowledge, I would like to thank and honor Gladys Kamakakuokalani Brandt, for whom our Center for Hawaiian Studies is named. It was her vision and her bequest to the Brandt Fund at the UH Foundation that allows us to support the work of the Brandt Chair for Comparative Polynesian Studies.
Alors, avant de commencer notre discussion, on pourrait dire notre partage des connaissances ancestrales de Polynésie, nous voulons bien sûr remercier et honorer Gladys Kamakakuokalani Brandt. C'est grâce à elle que le Centre des études hawaïennes est né. C'est son nom, Kamakakuokalani, excuse-moi, et grâce à elle, nous avons mis en place une fondation, le Brandt Fund, avec l'Université de Hawaï, afin de soutenir le travail dans les études comparatives polynésiennes que nous faisons partie ce soir. Alors, grâce à elle, nous avons ce webinaire toutes les semaines.
Tonight, I have a special oli to dedicate to Auntie Gladys Brandt, to my mom, Catherine Leilani Lee, and to Dr. Jean-Claude Teriʻioteraʻi, who recently went to join the stars in the heavens, and whom we are honoring with a discussion of his work on Tahitian traditional star navigation.
Voilà. Et ce soir, elle va nous chanter un oli, une chanson qu'elle dédie à Gladys, Tati Gladys, mais également à sa maman, Catherine Lelanili, et bien sûr au docteur Jean-Claude Teriʻioteraʻi, qui nous a quittés il n'y a pas très longtemps. Voilà, et que nous allons bien sûr honorer avec voilà, ce partage de son travail, sa recherche sur les, voilà, les étoiles et la navigation traditionnelle.
Oui. Eu mai kuali Teriʻioteraʻi lu kapui ko haalele nei te le. Ia oi ka hiki poi alaha o nā kupuna umakua. Ia mako malalo ni weiho nā hua aloha I ka mehame. Mina kokole no ka manawa ue ke alhai. Mahalo nui ko mau haawina kupayana. E ala ka ina pula ka ike au maku au na hoku. E ho ai ka mana ono na kaua kau. E ho o nā ike a ko lilo ana I na hoku I ka lani. E o mai e kuali Teriʻioteraʻi. Alaha ole nui. Mahalo.
Maruru, hein, Maruru Lilikalā. Elle a écrit cette chanson-là, et puis super, hein? En tout cas magnifique. So thank you once again for writing that, Oli, and I'm sure family and friends are really happy about that. And of course, he's smiling on us.
He's smiling on us, yes. It just shows us we mustn't lose time. We must always spend time with those that we cherish. Okay. Tell us a story about Jean-Claude. Is this fa'a tomo ava'a? Does it in Tahitian? Does this mean in Hawaii? What we think in Hawaii?
Yeah.
Enter into the wa'a?
Yes, exactly. That's what's his name. It's funny because yeah, he always had that name, and of course we only knew him as Jean-Claude. And my personal story about him is that once I started to join Haururu, that's when I started to meet him. And so already his last name is pretty a challenge in itself to be able to see it. But it's an old name from the valley itself. And of course, Papineau. His parents are from Papineau, and his lineage is from Papineau. And so for him to have that Tahitian name, and of course his study of the stars and navigation is quite appropriate. Je disais, la fa'atomo ba'a et Teriʻioteraʻi, and c'est le prénom tahitien de Jean-Claude. Pour ceux qui ne le connaissaient pas, moi je l'ai rencontré il y a 10 ans dans l'association Haururu, et que après dans ce temps à Haururu, et après il est devenu président de Fafaiti Te Aumaohi, le VAA bien sûr, et dans cette étude des étoiles qu'il avait fait depuis plus de 20 ans, il avait bien sûr pu pratiquer, on pourrait dire, tester, expérimenter sur le VAA en tant que président, bien sûr, et lors d'un voyage sur Hawaï à retour. So yeah, it's funny that he has that name for Atomo, VAA, of course, and he was able to sail to Tahiti and Hawaii and back on Fafaiti Te Aumaohi as he was president as well, and it tests and experiment a lot of the method that the research and learned through his research for the last 20 years about ancestral navigation. So Jean-Claude was a doctor in linguistics and anthropology, and member of the Tahitian Academy, Farivana. They're the academy that actually, when it comes to new words, they go through the Farivana, and professor, of course, of Polynesian culture at the University of French Polynesia. So of course, he got his doctorate there too as well. And as I mentioned, also very, very active in several nonprofit organizations. Alors, comme je disais, Jean-Claude est docteur en linguistique et anthropologie, bien sûr, membre de l'Académie tahitienne de Farivana, et bien sûr, professeur de culture polynésienne à l'Université de Hawaï, à l'Université de Polynésie française, et donc, bien sûr, il a eu son doctorat à l'université, et que, bon, on était tous là quand il avait défendu sa thèse, bien sûr. Yeah, so next slide.
Great.
Alors, comme je disais tout à l'heure, il fait partie des membres, on pourrait dire, fondateurs de Haururu. Hein, depuis le début, il en faisait partie. Et après Haururu, il est devenu président de l'association Whawhaiti Te Ao Maui, qui est le Tahiti Voyaging Society. Et bien sûr, membre de Friends of Hokulea, qui a accueilli Hokulea lors de son tour du monde. Hokulea, bien sûr, le Polynésien hawaïen qui a fait le tour du monde et était venu en Polynésie 2 fois, à 2 occasions. Il a fait partie de l'équipe organisatrice. Et bien sûr, et lors de ce moment-là, il a bien sûr défendu sa thèse. Il avait écrit sa thèse que nous allons découvrir tout à l'heure. So, as I mentioned, Jean-Claude is from Papineau. He knows a lot of the legends, a lot of the stories of the Valley of Papineau, and of course, a fierce defender of Papineau and its traditions and its customs. So, being a member of Haururu since the inception of the nonprofit organization more than 25 years ago. After that, he was president of Whawhaiti Te Ao Maui, which is the Tahitian ba'a that sailed on several, I guess you could say, voyages. Te Manao Tenuana is the one in particular I was part of as well. And as I mentioned earlier, got to spend a lot of time when he was president there as he was preparing his thesis, and of course was able to sail on Whawhaiti, as you could see, to Hawaii and back. So he was able to experiment and test out his, I guess you could the theories in regards to the Tahitian method of navigation. And of course, member of the Friends of Hokulea, which I was also part of. And as we greeted, and he was, I guess you could say, one of the main people to organize, of course, the event of Hokulea coming to Tahiti, going around the world and coming back to Tahiti before it went back home. And so he sailed on Whawhaiti along with Hokulea when they came home after the worldwide voyage. And so that's one of the images that we have of him there in that picture. And so, voilà. Alors, I'm going to continue on, and of course, we're going to see the video, the first video, and as I mentioned earlier, he was an expert in language. Now, when I say an expert in language, to do an orero, you have to have this mastery of the Tahitian language, because not only you have to be able to recite it, but you have to, of course, in art and oratory art, you need to have that expression. You use different methods, of course, and he mastered every single type. There's like 6 or 7 types of orero in a Tahitian, and so he knew all of them. And when you had all these ceremonies, and when it comes to protocol, and he was the ti'a orero. He was the leader. He was the person that would say all the orero, all the speeches in Tahitian language. And so we're going to see a video where, as you mentioned earlier, we'll talk about it as well. Alors, on va say it in French. Alors, voilà, une première vidéo que je vais partager avec vous ce soir, c'est une vidéo où on démontre vraiment les qualités de l'art oratoire. Enfin, on pourrait dire, il était un maître de l'art oratoire. Je parle de Jean-Claude. Il était un ti'a orero, c'est quelqu'un qui mène en ce qui concerne toutes les cérémonies protocolaires, les cérémonies d'accueil. Il avait une maîtrise, bien sûr, de la langue, on le savait déjà, et pour pouvoir faire les orero, il fallait avoir cette maîtrise. Et là, dans la vidéo que je vais partager ce soir, c'est une vidéo de Haururu, qui a été filmée en 2000, je pense, voilà, il y a 20 ans, où on le voit, bien sûr, mener les orero lors de l'accueil des Hawaïens dans la vallée de Papineau. Et qu'on faisait ce lien entre Hawaï et Papineau. Et alors, tu avais une délégation avec Lilikalā, elle était présente avec sa classe de orero, bien sûr. Et bien sûr, il y avait une délégation de l'île de Kauai. Alors, l'association Haururu avait fait un voyage précédemment sur l'île de Kauai pour les fêtes de Kauai. Et en retour, la délégation de Kauai est venue dans la vallée. Et voilà, vous allez voir bien sûr les images de il y a 20 ans. So we're going to go back 20 years. We're going to see us as young people, I guess you could say. We're going to see Jean-Claude in his expression of the Tahitian language is magnificent. I mean, how can I say we lost somebody that was at the top of his game when it comes to. And this was 20 years ago. He was already up there. His mastery of the Tahitian language was unparalleled, and to be able to express it in the way he did in orero, which is fantastic. And of course, we'll get to see how Papineau was, and then next week we'll get to see how it is today. So this is going to be exciting, of course, to be able to share that with you. Alors, la semaine prochaine, bien sûr, on va découvrir Papineau aujourd'hui. Hein? Alors, pour ça, ben, on va faire la vidéo. So, you have any words you want to say? I mean, you saw a little bit of the video, but yeah, we're going to watch it. Okay.
Interesting to see Jean-Claude telling us all about the world and greeting us in Tahitian and with his oratory and his movements. We don't see that very often anywhere in Polynesia anymore. So what a treat. Here we go.
Mm-hmm. Voilà, exactement. Okay, let's check it out.
This is Papineau Ocean.
We're at the river mouth. Hein? Nous sommes à l'embouchure hein, de la vidéo. So you can see, we're gonna put a little pause, yeah, of course. And as I mentioned earlier, oh, you put a little pause, right?
Right, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you were there that day. What was your impression? Elle était là, hein, ce jour-là. Quelles étaient tes impressions à avoir écouté Jean-Claude?
Well, you know, we didn't know what to expect because we had never been there before. We had read, one of my students, Keone Kuoha, had read in the Tahitian newspaper that Hawaiians were coming to visit the birthplace of Pere. And so I said, oh, birthplace of Pere. Pere is my Aumakua. I have to go there. And I said, who are the Hawaiians? They said, oh, Blaine Kia. And I had not met Blaine at that time. So then we came and we saw him and I said, oh, Blaine, my uncle is Pele. May I maybe join with you? And I think we had about 12 faculty and students. It was Kelly and I, and mostly students actually. And so he said, sure. And then after Jean-Claude did that orero, then we chanted. And when they heard that all my students were chanters, he said, oh, you can lead with that chanting and then we'll dance hula after. Because his people hula dances. And as we're looking at now, we're seeing the middle of the Papinu'o Valley. We're going to go to a marae there that is where you do make offerings before you go to the mountain. Can you describe
Yes,
that for us?
exactly. Yeah. Alors, juste, je vais vous demander l'impression qu'elle avait. Alors, Lilikalā est arrivée quand elle a su qu'il y avait une délégation hawaïenne qui arrivait sur Papineau et que ils ont appris dans le journal que Papineau, en fait, c'était le lieu de naissance de la déesse Pélé, celle déesse du volcan à Kilauea, et que dans sa généalogie, en descendance, Lilikalā en fait partie, ça fait partie de sa généalogie, c'est son ancêtre. Alors, elle avait demandé à Blenkia qui, bien sûr, on pourrait dire le fils Fa'amu, on pourrait dire de Yves Doudou, la famille Doudou, en tout cas, avait demandé à Blaine, parce que c'était lui qui a organisé ce déplacement entre Kauai et puis si l'université de Hawaï pouvait participer aussi. Et quand ils sont arrivés, bien sûr, c'est la première fois, comme ils n'ont jamais vu Papineau, c'est la première fois qu'ils rencontrent Jean-Claude, et que bien sûr, ils étaient très surpris de savoir que à la naissance, il y avait tellement de tape-out, tellement de signes qui parlaient de Pélé dans la vallée de Papineau. Ils étaient bien sûr excités et contents, et que bien sûr, son groupe, ils étaient des chanteurs, en fait. Ils faisaient eux des olis. Alors Blaine a dit, super, tu peux participer, tu vas faire le oli. Alors voilà, ils ont répondu dans les olis, et c'était un super échange et que nous allons découvrir tout à l'heure. So now we're going to go into what we call the entrance into the high valley, the deep valley. So Papineau, you have the waterfront, which we saw there. That's Muribai, yeah? And that's where you have ceremonies. And I didn't show it, but then you actually gather water from the ocean. And the salt is a gift that you come when you go into the valley. You bring salt water, and of course the salt is the most important part of the salt water as an offering that you give, because those in the valley don't have salt, and salt is very useful to preserve food, and very, very, it's a commodity that was very important. Yeah. And so we go into, before you come into, of course, Papineau, you have to come to this place where we're going to go, where this next images are. And Tifahuhu is a place called, and there's a mara there, To'umaru, and that's where you have our ceremonies. And of course, he of course does a pari, and which he describes the area. That's a pari, and of course with that patauto, what you can see where they respond and everything is very active, and that's another form of oratory art. And he continues on, of course, to describe the place and the importance, of course, of the place, and of course hosting and you coming to, of course, ask permission to come into the valley. Yeah. So, alors, I'm going to translate now. Vite fait, juste pour dire, dans les cérémonies protocolaires, tu passes d'abord par l'océan pour recueillir de l'eau salée, le sel qui est très important pour entrer dans la vallée. Comme vous voyez, voilà, je peux peut-être laisser, après je vais expliquer. So I'm going to let the speech go, and then I'll translate the rest after.
Eu falei, na mão a Teriʻioteraʻi, opera. Teriʻioteraʻi opera temai, e te mau paro falei, Teriʻioteraʻi mau hiro. India tātou. Rāte mau paro I mio marama. Teriʻioteraʻi mau. Bravo, you the mouth ayore. The uru ayore. The when we up here, what the dear of the time. The when we without the Utah. Thereby the kind of crowd. It's an hour. Don't move your night, run out for the jacket. Stay with both Maka, Uncle for Parati, who they like that? Hey, why are you? Oh, wait, hey, why are you? Oh, wait, hey, why are you? Ha! What did he do? What did he do? What did he do? Easy, no what going to the house. Away, if I face up to the heat. Away, if I face up to
What? What
Oh,
happened? Oh,
you probably went press backwards. Okay, so I'm gonna. Oh,
here
can
he
you
is.
get back to it? Okay.
Yes, here we go.
Okay, so yeah, you can stop it right there. So there's everybody here. Okay. Alors, comme je disais tout à l'heure, après avoir recueilli, bien sûr, cette petite cérémonie au bord de mer, l'accueil, bien sûr, le lien entre Tahiti et Hawaï, il disait, bien sûr, Jean-Claude, dans son orero, que les vagues montaient la rivière de Vaitouru pour arriver jusqu'à ce lieu où nous nous trouvons. Et là, après, les Hawaïens doivent, on pourrait dire, demander permission de rentrer dans la vallée, la haute vallée, on pourrait dire, à Uta, de Papineau, qui est bien sûr le lieu le plus sacré de l'île, hein, et de Papineau, et que bien sûr dans son patauto, il décrit, enfin Paris, il décrit d'abord toutes les montagnes qui sont autour. Hein. Il parlait des cheveux de Pelé, hein, il parlait de la montagne de Hiro, de Maorez, et bien sûr il a fait son patauto qui décrit bien sûr l'endroit, et bon, il parlait bien sûr de Pelé dans son patauto, le Puraha, qui est bien la cascade juste à côté, et d'autres choses aussi, d'autres tapes que nous allons découvrir. Alors ça c'est la deuxième, et puis après il y aura encore un autre. So as I mentioned, so in this area, of course, is the a place where you enter let's say the most important or sacred part of the valley. Yeah? There's three parts of the valley, the interior part of the valley. And of course, in his Paripari, of course, he described all the different mountains. So we talked about the hair of Pele, which is not too far, right? And in the back, you have Hiro's Mo'a, you have the Mo'a of the Maiore, which is like a Uru. And of course, you heard the Patauto, that, that really, I guess you could say active kind of thing, right? And it's rhythmic, of course, and it's a lot of fun, yeah, in a sense, yeah. But it's actually, it brings out a lot of the very important parts, like the chief of the valley, as well as Pele, who lived in this valley. And then we had not too far Hermimi, which is like a waterfall, the Puraha, which of course, unfortunately, I won't be able to show everything, but encourage everybody to come into the valley of Papineau one day. I should be very happy to host you. Alors, voilà, on va continuer les images et nous arrivons bien sûr sur le lit qu'on appelle le Wharehape. Et qu'il y a une cérémonie où on traverse la rivière, cérémonie de purification, après suivi bien sûr d'autres cérémonies. So we're gonna, next images are going to be up in Wharehape, and of course you're going to see everybody go through the river. Of course, it's a purification ceremony, and then after that, come to the site, of course, the ceremonial site, and we're here again. Once again, it's going to be pretty cool exchange happening. And anyway, take it away.
Can't tell the difference between Hawaiians and Tahitians.
There's the archaeological site. There's a big manaha that we changed. Yeah. It's the head of the caterpillar. Yeah. This is Opureapere. This is the stone, sacred stone.
Yes. The birthplace of Pere.
Yeah.
I was so happy to be there.
And the mo'o, of course, the half human, half mo'o. Messenger between Ipu and Teawa. Oh. I think Kalani is looking at. Look at everybody. You cannot tell who's Tahitian, who's Hawaiian. Huh? Oh, who's that?
You called me out. I have to do something.
Wow. You know, this is incredible to see that exchange happening in both languages. Yeah. And it's something, and unfortunately, we don't see very often. Yeah. Which that's why I wanted to show this to everybody.
So much for doing that. I had forgotten all about my dance. That was for Kameʻeleihiwa. But also, you know, it's wonderful that Jean-Claude was sharing with us as Hawaiians, and us Hawaiians were sharing with Tahitians. It was going back and forth. Oh, those little ways that we celebrate life for 100 generations.
Yeah. I mean, voilà. Alors, comme disait, hein, c'était un moment assez exceptionnel, ce partage entre les deux langues. Hein, et c'est quelque chose que, comme Lilikalā dit, c'est un exemple pour les futures générations. En tout cas, c'est quelque chose qu'on voit, hélas, pas souvent, hein, ce genre d'échange de l'art oratoire. Et quelle coïncidence que Lilikalā était là également en ce moment assez spécial. Hein. Once again, I just... you know, I came like a day after we had a big showcase, and stuff like that. And so I remember being there in 2000 and seeing what Haururu had done. And I was quite impressed in the work that was done by those who were there, you know, from the beginning. Yeah. So acknowledging Jean-Claude Teriʻioteraʻi being part of Haururu since the inception of Haururu and what they've been able to accomplish for Tahitian culture. And you have to note that, because Matari'inia is celebration that we have every year. Now it's now everywhere. Every district, every community celebrates that, and Haururu were the first ones to really, I guess you could say, put it on the map. Yeah. And thanks to Jean-Claude and Papa Hifara and many, Papa Apon and all these people from Haururu, they set the example, I guess you could say. Yeah. And as you mentioned, that example is what was needed for the kids to understand. Yeah. Je voulais juste dire que encore tu as remercié le travail qui a été effectué par rapport à Haururu pendant toutes ces années, hein, j'ai dit 25 ans, à mettre en place le site, mais également mettre en place les cérémonies, le calendrier polynésien, Matarinia, c'est Haururu qui a commencé vraiment à mettre en lumière cette cérémonie, la compréhension du calendrier tahitien, le temps Matarinia, Materiraro, avec bien sûr Jean-Claude, toutes ces contributions, il ne faut pas qu'on oublie. Hein, et comme disait, c'était eux qui ont fait l'exemple qu'aujourd'hui, que tout le monde célèbre Matarinia. C'est bientôt, hein, c'est ce vendredi. Hein, et que les îles s'y mettent également. Voilà, Kokura qui va le faire ce vendredi. C'est des exemples, et toutes les communautés de Tahiti reconnaissent la valeur de ce jour, de cette cérémonie, de la célébration du Nouvel An. So yeah, it's a New Year celebration that is going to be on Friday for us in Tahiti, and of course this will be the first one that we will have without Jean-Claude, and so once again we'll be remembering him in everything that we do, and of course acknowledging all the work and all the research that was done. And so talking about research, it's going to be our next topic. Yeah, and I know look, it's already 7:45. Yes, I'm hopefully gonna try to do as best as I can to get through. There's so much great stuff to share, you know. And you mentioned maybe we'll have to move it on next week or so. But I'm just gonna start just by talking about his doctorate. Yeah, and so as I mentioned earlier, he's a doctor in anthropology and in the Tahitian languages, I guess you could say. And this is the topic, so this is the title. That, alors voilà, avant de commencer, bien sûr, il y a tellement de choses à partager, une thèse énorme qu'il a travaillé pendant plus de 20 ans de recherche. Et pouvoir le partager en 1 heure, c'est impossible, bien sûr. Alors, on va essayer de au moins partager une partie, et voilà un peu le thème qu'il avait choisi: mythe, astronomie, découpage du temps et navigation traditionnelle, l'héritage océanique contenu dans les mots de la langue tahitienne. And so I'm just reading it: the myths, astronomy, time division, and traditional navigation, the Oceanian heritage contained in the words of the Tahitian language. And so understanding that, you know, you have to master the Tahitian language to understand all the nuances behind it. Of course, just like in Hawaiian, yeah, a word can mean several things, and putting it into context, understanding, and being able to gain this knowledge to bring about, I guess you could say, a method of navigation that, of course, you know, we lost in essence with the arrival of colonization, and which they outlawed the navigation, they outlawed the teaching of navigation, they outlawed the construction of va'a, they outlawed everything in 1842. So a law was passed, boom, we couldn't do that anymore. And that was, of course, the colonizers' way of controlling the communication. I guess you could say that's the tool of communication, is the va'a. And so once you take that out of the equation, then of course the people, you know, are distraught, and without a symbol. Of course, thanks to Hokulia, got that back. Alors, comme je disais, c'est de pouvoir comprendre les nuances de la langue tahitienne, et après de formuler une méthode de navigation. C'était la recherche, on pourrait dire, de Jean-Claude. Hein, et qu'il avait proposé, il avait bien sûr défendu sa thèse, il avait même expérimenté sa thèse à bord de Fafaité lors du voyage sur Hawaï et aller-retour. Mais comme je disais dans ce que je disais en anglais, bien sûr, on va avoir cette maîtrise de la langue. Ça, c'est la première des choses. Et bien sûr, la fortitude de pouvoir après l'exprimer d'une façon que tout le monde puisse le comprendre, et que moi-même, une personne qui apprend, on peut dire la langue et apprend la navigation, j'étais bien sûr très honoré de pouvoir comprendre et puis bien sûr partager. So once again, real honor to be able to share this with you guys tonight. I think the next video, I have to, this is probably the last time I'll hear him talking. So before you play it, I just want to explain the context of it all, okay? And so, voilà, nous allons faire une dernière vidéo de Jean-Claude, dont, bien sûr, dans l'art oratoire, hein, des grands speeches qu'il avait fait pour le voyage Te Mana o Te Moana. So I was part of a voyage called Te Mana o Te Moana, the spirit of the ocean, where we had 7 va'a, sailing around the whole Pacific for 2 years and visiting 25 island nations and talking about the ocean, talking about our culture, our traditions. And so this is the first time Haururu greeted any voyaging society to Papino. So this is in 2010. And he, of course, just like he did for you guys back in 2000, he was the person that led us in Orero. Alors, voilà, c'est le contexte, bien sûr. Haururu n'avait, pour la première fois, allé accueillir des associations de voyage navigation traditionnelles. C'était un des grands projets de Haururu, c'était bien sûr Fafaite Te Aomaohi. Et que de pouvoir accueillir ces associations dans la vallée, c'était une première. Et que bien sûr, Jean-Claude en faisait partie de cette organisation, de cet accueil. Et voilà le speech, on pourrait dire, le orero qu'il avait fait pour tous ces navigants. So here we're going to share that. Okay.
Hey, here we go. I love this video, actually.
Mai te whenua. Iti ai Haururu. Tēnā ora pai tōna parau. Haururu tei kōni kōkō nei tauna mari. Teriʻioteraʻi te tūwa mata. Nara mai tei. I matei o par. Te nati mata. Ua ata torea. Tei whenua. Parai mari ki matai. Iara matai te puhiro paraku. Te matai e puhi mai. Mai whenuara. O tewa. Na tewa ika. Nari mai tau matai. Ei muri ho. I te hi atu ai te tai o mai e tanu hui e te whenua. O hapai ano topa hi atu ai te ua te whenuara. Hapai ano i te tō ogu. Pārpai te wirei. O te huri pārei te hau o morere. O te tuaro tāne matau. I te papure rautirei sevana. I te reira, waiti ma te tau te pia te tā. Te atua te whenua. Para o mai tei tōto taria. O tāne. E atua te whenua. Ramai a tāne o te ura waine. O te tiai o te whenua. Tāne matarua. Aure pō, aure taria, aure mata. Aure o pū. Aure wawa. Aure huwa. Te huri o te atua tāne. O mato i atua. Te para tāne. Te nāk mara tāne. Te maua tāne. Te vai a tāne. Te vai ora tāne. Te iei o whenua. Ai te tui atua te pai whenua.
Libor.
Tāne ana. Ai te tui tāne te whenua. Te no reira. Iei te mai kai tātou e. Nara tutu ia tāne. Enu tātou kawa. Te ama tāne. E amu tātou ia tāne. E ai tātou tau atuara. E ai atua tātou. me te maura. Tamai tato ki tai whainua. Te vai da tolo parau. Wah, pai ku tato te meti. No te parang tato mo marai. Te meti tato te kuit muria wai. E parau de tono. Me terá whainua o muria wai. Yorai. Te au hopa iano. Oi te tato e te orari o te kai popoti. E te na ore prota u popoti. Popoti iano sialu. E ati iano saikua. Vai ho cortar la guarda e che quando ora. E te mani. Che voglio ai tornado. Paue a tutto ora. Oh, poti toawa. Paue. Paue a tutto ora. Oh, poti toawa. Paue. Paue a tutto ora. Ah, poti toawa. Sei tutto a terra santa. Oh, poi morai. Guarda i tende, tottare morai. Vuoi essere tutto iar. Guarda, vuoi sei iar. Puoi essere tutto iar. Guarda, sei iar. Amo io te apparo. One I try. E tutto vuoi essere io sei bueno. Ora. Para você lei. Já o tô. Oi, gente. Para isso eu tô em mara. Ou pode haver.
Wow.
So tell us now about his teachings.
Yes. So just I was there that day. Of course, I was behind the camera. You could see the different types of art, oratory. You had the fa'ateni, which is, talking about the greatness of things, people, those that are there, those, tani, of course, ATUA. And then you have that challenge, the fa'atara, it's called the fa'atara, and then you can see, so he, and once again, just acknowledging his expertise in the different genres. It's like 6 different genres of orero. Alors encore, je disais juste, on voyait dans son orero, bien sûr, le lien qu'il faisait, bien sûr, avec ses navigants, ses idées, bien sûr, de comprendre un peu le site Tani, bien sûr, à toi du site, mais également, on voyait, voilà, c'était le genre de fa'ateni, un genre de fa'ateni. Après, le fa'atara, c'est un peu le challenge, le défi qu'il faisait, également par rapport à ces personnes, ces visiteurs, mais qui ont bien sûr été accueillis sur place sur Farihapi. Yeah, so that's just to once again, just want to acknowledge his mastery of oratory art. Yeah. Okay. So now we talk about his work. Of course, not only was he an expression, but also he was behind in the books reading and of course understanding and translating, and to bring up about Tahitian skies. And that's the main topic of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Alors, je disais non seulement qu'il avait une maîtrise de la langue polynésienne, de la langue tahitienne, bien sûr, pour faire toutes ces recherches qu'il avait fait, mais également en recherche, bien sûr, il était très intéressé par les étoiles, l'astronomie, bien sûr, la navigation. Et là, on va découvrir un peu ce qu'il avait fait. Il est dans une présentation qui, bien sûr, que lui-même avait mis en place et que, bien sûr, moi, j'ai contribué dans la traduction. So, I will start with the Ihifetu, of course. That's how we say astronomy, Tahitian astronomy. And so, first basic thing, of course, is learning the names of all the stars, and so you can go to the next slide. And so that was important for him. As we saw with Libor's presentation not too long ago, that we have written, of course, text from Teriʻioteraʻi and all the things that was done. He used the translation of John Davies in his English Tahitian language dictionary. Of course, William Ellis and his Polynesian researches, and of course, Teriʻioteraʻi, the ancient Tahiti. And these are the resource books. And then he found that there's 100 celestial bodies. And so identifying celestial bodies, the stars, planets, constellations, grouping of stars, yeah. And with the functionality of understanding space and location. and time, location, of course, and for agriculture and fishing purposes, and omens and myths contribute, of course, to the lore of cosmogony in Tahitian culture. Alors, comme je disais en anglais, la recherche qu'il faisait, bien sûr, les ressources qu'il utilisait, c'est le dictionnaire de John Davis. Il y en avait plusieurs, mais les plus anciens pour lui étaient les plus importants, les plus proches de ce qui était vrai, bien sûr. Hein. Alors, il y a le dictionnaire de John Davis, qu'il utilisait beaucoup, le William Ellis, bien sûr, à la recherche de la Polynésie d'autrefois. C'est bien sûr un livre écrit. Et bien sûr, Teriʻioteraʻi Henry, Tahiti aux temps anciens, ce sont les livres principaux qu'il a utilisés pour découvrir qu'il y a plus d'une centaine d'astres célestes qui sont identifiés et que, bien sûr, avec sa maîtrise de la langue, bien sûr, on va pouvoir comprendre un peu plus avec 3 fonctionnalités, localisation dans l'espace, localisation dans le temps, et mythe et présage. Nous avons déjà vu, bien sûr, grâce à Libor dans sa présentation, on a pas mal de différents, on pourrait dire, les étoiles et tout comme ça, bien sûr, faisant référence à Teriʻioteraʻi Henry qui dit vraiment la généalogie des étoiles, hein, et on revient sur ça, bien sûr, dans la recherche que Jean-Claude a fait. Okay, next slide. So if you have any questions, okay. So of course, we're talking about Tahitian skies in the 18th century because he based his research pretty much on those books, ancient times. Yeah, and the older the books, the better. The closer it was to those who were really there, in essence. And I guess for him, in his research, he believed that the more it was translated, the more the further it got from the real meanings, of course. So in his mastery of the language, he was able to go back and understand all the nuances in regards to the definitions and how these stars were named to give you a better idea of how they were used, in essence, right? Alors, comme je disais, le ciel tahitien du 18e siècle, c'est bien sur ce que nos ancêtres regardaient dans le ciel et comment ils utilisaient les étoiles afin de pouvoir, bien sûr, naviguer ou sur l'agriculture ou toutes les fonctionnalités de tous les jours dans la vie quotidienne du Polynésien, du Tahitien d'autrefois. Et que lui, bien sûr, il s'est vraiment basé sur les écritures qui ont été les plus anciennes des écritures et comme je disais tout à l'heure, les sources qu'il utilisait parce qu'il estimait que c'était le plus rapproché et avec plusieurs traductions, plusieurs versions, voilà, il s'éloignait un peu plus de la vérité. Et voilà, il s'est basé un peu ça, c'est ce qu'il dit dans sa thèse. OK, next.
So I know Rumia is the name of the egg of Ta'aro.
Yes, exactly. So that's became afterwards the dome of the sky.
What is that? What is this word?
Huoru. It's like I guess you could say like the Genesis, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Teʻoa, so it's the naming, yeah, the naming really of the I guess you could say the skies, yeah. So in essence of Umia, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so as you can see, he found these are the astronomical terms that he found in his research, and of course, and then you could, if you want to, so we'll just go through it. Hein? Voici les termes qu'il avait dit, et je vais les lister tout simplement. Ra is the sun, of course, le soleil. Marama, the moon, of course. Fetu, which is a star, right? Avea, which is a guiding star. So it's a étoile guide, hein? L'étoile guide. Hui Fetu, constellation. Hui is a group, hein? C'est un groupement des étoiles, une constellation. Rua, hein? Une constellation, un groupement des étoiles qui va de l'est à l'ouest. Okay, so Rua, according to his research, is a constellation of stars that go from east to west, so spread out from east to west. So a group of stars, yeah. Taurua is a star marker of that group. Okay, so star marker, alors le Taurua, c'est l'étoile marqueur du groupe, de cette constellation du roi. Okay. Po, there's several definitions, but in regards to astronomy, it's une constellation qui va du nord au sud. Okay, so Po is opposite. It's from east to west, to north and south. It's a constellation, a groupment of stars from north to south, right? Yeah, so that's, and then you continue. These are the basic, I guess you could say, yeah. Ana. So we talked about Po. Okay, the star marker of Po is Ana. Right? Alors voilà, c'est l'étoile marqueur de la constellation de Po, c'est Ana. Okay. Fetu Horo. So Fetu Horo. So a star that runs, right? So that's a planet. It's une planète. Right? Fetu Ave, comet. It's a comet. Okay. Fetu Pau ou Opure, meteorite, meteorite. And so Opure Apere, the stone that we saw, it's an Opure.
and that's a meteorite of Pele. So that's what we saw in the hut on Wharehape in the video. Ça, c'est ce qu'on avait vu sur le Wharepote sur Wharehape dans l'image avec Feturere, shooting star, une étoile filante, Mahu, nursery of stars, and Moana. So Moana is every part that there's no stars, so the emptiness, yeah. So les parties où il n'y a pas d'étoiles spécifiques, ben, on appelle ça Moana, des océans, de la mer. Hein? Okay. Continue. So he was able to find now. The Tahitian didn't have what we call cardinal points. They don't, we use differently in a sense of calling it. But if you wanted to send a direction and anything, we had those words. Okay, so once again, alors je disais, les Tahitiens n'utilisaient pas les points cardinaux. Hein? C'est pas nord, sud, est, ouest. C'est pas comme ça au temps ancien. Ils utilisaient plus par rapport au soleil, est, ouest. Hein? So they use more so by according to the sun, east, west. It makes more logic, yeah. So, but he did find words that would describe the northern and the south. So here, north, le sud, c'est Apatoʻerau. Okay, and the south is Apatoʻa. Okay, so we'll see later why it's called Tuʻerau and Tuʻa. East, of course, it's Hitia, and west is Tuʻa. Alors voilà, l'est c'est Hitia, et ouest c'est Tuʻa. Okay, horizon, l'horizon c'est Paere, et parallel latitude. So parallel latitude is Rua, which is a star path. We'll we'll understand a little bit more. So this is kind of like the terms that we're going to use so that later we'll understand a little bit better. And then so we have Rua. So that's something you really, so in the Rua, the star path is, the sun is considered a star. So the passage of the sun across the sky, the longest time is of course Rua Rua. So that's summer solstice for us. That's in December, that's 24th of December. Hein? Alors voilà, le passage, le chemin des étoiles, le soleil est considéré comme une étoile aussi. Et le chemin le plus long qu'il traverse dans le ciel, c'est le Rua Rua. Rua qui veut dire long. Rua, le chemin. Et ça, c'est le solstice d'été pour nous, hein, ici à Tahiti. And that would be reversed for you in Hawaii, in the northern hemisphere. And the winter solstice is Rua Poto, the shortest passage. Et Rua Poto pour nous. And ça, c'est le solstice d'hiver. That's the winter solstice. Yeah? Okay, next. Okay, and so there's other terms that we use in astronomy, equinox or the equator, Rahiti, right? Even day, even sun. Rahiti, the middle, the sun in the middle, Rahiti. Voilà, le soleil au milieu, ou bien l'équateur, l'équinoxe, c'est le cycle du soleil. Et Rahiti, c'est le soleil au milieu. C'est ça, c'est l'équinoxe. Okay. Then you have the compass of stars, so Rua Fetu. So the Rua, we call the pathway of stars, will give us a compass, will give us direction. So that's called Rua Fetu. Right? Et ça, c'est la direction, bien sûr, les étoiles, c'est le compas des étoiles. And the wind compass, just as important as the star compass, Rua Matai. Of course, the wind giving direction. The compass, le compas des vents. Ecliptic, and so when we talk about the different planets following the eclipse, ecliptic, I guess you get a trajectory, hein? L'ecliptic, c'est Tua o Urupoi, following the sun from the morning to now. Okay, of course. Et ça, c'est bien sûr l'écliptique. Longitude, longitude. So we have longitude. And his definition of longitude is Po, north to south. You will get that closer in, which also means pillar. Alors, le pilier, le Po, hein, c'est également cette direction nord-sud, hein, on l'avait vu tout à l'heure. Hein. Et island meridian, okay, so on the top, where you have the zenith star, I guess you could see, Ra Abatea, where the sun is at noon, right? Okay, so understanding position of the sun in the sky, of course, understanding the highest point gives you, of course, this factor that's going to help us determine longitude. Yeah? Encore, ça va nous aider hein, déterminer la longitude et bien sûr, on doit connaître le soleil à Abatea qui est au plus haut sommet hein, du soleil. Et zenith star, Po Rua, so the zenith, the highest point. Hein. Voilà. Voici les termes, on pourrait dire, que nous trouvons hein,
voilà, pour exprimer un peu l'astronomie, l'étude des étoiles, hein, des astres célestials. So, of course, these are the Tahitian terms that, as in mentioned, that he wrote in a book. He has actually a book about the Tahitian stars, and so he put all this in understanding where they got it from, what it means, all the different nuances of what the words mean, and that's something we could spend hours and hours for sure studying each and every one of these words. But we'll continue on to the next. And so the Tahitians, of course, incredibly recognized that there were planets. They couldn't see them, but they knew that so next slide, the next slide. So
everyone can see the planets, they move around.
Okay.
They know,
Yeah.
and the term Ra'awatea is the same in Hawaiian, La'awakea.
Okay.
The
Oh,
moon
cool.
La'awakea, the same thing, moon, sun. Yeah. Very
Okay.
cool.
All right. So the next, yeah. So we have the Tahitian. They recognized that there were 5 planets. Of course, which much more, but to the naked eye, they could see that there's 5 planets that behave differently from others. So there's 5 lights in the sky that behave differently. So they gave them names. Okay. So and these are the names. Okay. Voilà. Alors les Tahitiens ont reconnu que dans le ciel il y avait des étoiles qui bougeaient à leur manière, on pourrait dire, différents des autres étoiles. Et voilà, alors ils les appelaient qui couraient, voilà, des étoiles qui courent. Il y en a des 5 à l'œil nu, bien sûr. On connaît bien sûr qu'on a beaucoup plus que ça, mais voici les 5. And so what's interesting to know is that they have different names. Look, Venus has 2. So, Taurua horo poipoi, or Taurua horo aihai. And what does that mean? Poipoi means the star that runs the Taurua in the morning and in the evening as well. And so depending on the time of the year, this star will be identified as one that does that. And Venus and Jupiter will be doing the same thing. So they'd have both the same name. But Jupiter had a name even more, Taurua nui I tu'i te Teriʻioteraʻi. So you have the indicator of the star, which Taurua, which is part of a constellation, that we mentioned earlier, Rua, that goes from east to west. And after that, you have its functionality. Okay. Alors, là, je disais en français, bien sûr, en anglais, que voilà, Vénus et Jupiter, ils ont des noms qui sont communs parce qu'on les voit le plus au coucher du soleil, hein, le matin, je veux dire, le lever du soleil, et Yahiahi après le coucher du soleil, en soirée. Hein, ce sont et bien sûr, voilà, et dont l'expression de Taurua, c'est une étoile qui est s'identifiée comme une étoile brillante, marqueur du Rua, du constellation Rua, et on disait Rua, c'est le chemin des étoiles, une constellation qui allait vers l'ouest. Donc, bien sûr, Jupiter avait également un nom supplémentaire, Taurua nui et tu'i te Teriʻioteraʻi. So, hélas, je ne pourrais pas vous dire exactement qu'est-ce que ça veut dire, mais ça va être une étude. Okay, and so once again, understanding, the Tahitian language, of course, will help you understand the function of the star and how it helped the Tahitians, of course, yeah, and that's why they named them the way they did. Okay, so Mars, of course, it's Maunu Ura, Fetu Ura. Of course, you can see it's red. Yeah, Mercury is Tairo, and then Saturn is Fetutea, so it's like a white bright star, yeah? Natuʻuhi. So in his research, Tahitians had names for all these things that we see in our sky. And so he was able to, of course, place it with, the translation and everything like that. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, you find the genealogy of the stars in the Te Ura Henry in ancient times. So if you do want to, you just refer back to the Libor's presentation. Alors si vous avez bien sûr, vous voulez voir encore plus en plus de détails, vous pouvez lire Tahiti aux temps anciens, hein, et qu'avec la présentation de Libor qu'avait fait la dernière fois, on voit bien sûr la généalogie des étoiles. Hein, okay? All right, so we're gonna go next. Sorry, I'm kind of rushing through because we have so much, but I wanna show as much as possible, yeah. And
finish another time. No worries.
okay. So the next, yeah, of course, yeah, and then so on the constellations, right, of the 18th century. So yeah, so yeah, that's just the same thing, but it's in French, yeah. So you can go on to the next, yeah. Okay, so this is the basis really of his method of navigation, understanding these 2 constellations, Rua and Po. Okay, Alors, on pourrait dire la base de cette méthodologie de la navigation tahitienne, hein, pour Jean-Claude, c'est vraiment de bien comprendre le Rua et le Po. Ce sont ces deux constellations qu'on avait définies tout à l'heure, hein. Le Rua, c'est une constellation, hein, un chemin d'étoiles qui va de l'est en l'ouest.
This is very different. This is
Yeah.
very different from
Et le Po, c'est le chemin, on pourrait dire, constellation qui va du nord au sud au nord. Okay. And so in each of these constellations, you had a marker, you had a very bright star that you could identify, easily. And if you know that star, then you know that there's other stars coming before and after. So understanding that, okay? So for Rua and for Po, okay? Alors, encore une fois, c'est les Taurua et les Ana qui identifient, qui sont les marqueurs qui puissent t'aider à identifier le groupement d'étoiles ou les chemins des étoiles que chaque constellation représente et que nous allons bien sûr découvrir plus tard la méthodologie, on pourrait dire. Hein? So, all right, so these constellations follow two directions, right? So one, you look into the sky and you see a series of stars in the sky that run from east to west, and you see all of them together. And then, of course, in the Micronesian, we also identify those things too. And maybe next time we'll show a little bit more in comparison to other forms of navigation. Yeah. And so he identified the Rua as those stars. And so understanding Rua is going to be very important today. And of course, when you look up into the sky and you can identify as the stars come to its zenith point, right? You have these different stars in different locations looking up, and that are grouped in a way from north to south. Yeah, so trying to conceptualize. Alors voilà, conceptualisation est assez intéressant. Hein. Faut même on se mettre un peu, on pourrait dans ce 3D, on fait des dimensions 3D. Hein. Et moi aussi, j'ai des fois des mal un peu à comprendre comment ça marche. Mais en fait, voilà ce qu'il a identifié, ce qu'il a mis en place. Et de cette base, la navigation traditionnelle qui va se mener. So from this basis, understanding these stars, what the stars are, how they're located, how they're grouped together, is the basis of this method of navigation. Okay, so we'll move on. So here, I translated it in French. So you have it in both languages. All right, so what is a Po? So let's just go back to it, okay? So Po, we saw, of course, it's a constellation, right? That's what he identified as far as astronomy, right? And, you know, depending on the context of the word, it could be defined differently, right? So we learned from our previous presentations the meaning of Po, of course, right? P-O-U, not P-O, okay? Po, right? It means pillar, right? So remember we talked about the creation of the universe and, of course, of the Tahitian sky. So the pillars actually support the dome sky, which is filled with all the things that we see in the sky, okay? So that's a Po, right? Alors voilà, encore revient sur, bien sûr, la définition du Po. On avait vu ça lors des dernières présentations, chaque fois qu'on parle du ciel ou chaque fois qu'on parle de cosmogonie, on parle de Po, hein, c'est bien sûr le pilier. Et dans ce que nous connaissons, bien sûr, c'est le pilier qui aide à fixer le dôme du ciel. Hein, pour voilà, le Po, c'est ça. Et le Ana, c'est une étoile qui est l'étoile marqueur de ce que nous avons vu dans la définition astronomique, mais ça veut dire brillant et lumineux. All right, so Ana, we saw earlier, it means the star marker of the Po, right? But it also means shiny. So Ana, when we say Ana, oh, that's really shiny or really brilliant, yeah? All right, so in this context, understanding Ana is that a pillar becoming a brilliant star. Voilà, c'est ça, le pilier qui devient une étoile scintillante. Okay. So the top of the pillar, for example, is the Ana. I guess you can understand that, right? So the top is looking at voilà, le bout, on pourrait dire du pilier, c'est le Ana, hein, c'est l'étoile brillante et tout ça. So that's Po, right? All right, so we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about Rua, right? And so Rua, we talked, you know, with Libor and everything like that. We understood Rua. So in the Tahitians, they thought that the planet was flat. Okay, of course. Yeah. And then at the edge of the flatness, there was a hole. Okay, right. But there's a diagram of you have the 10 Tahitian skies, yeah, you can see that. And just imagine the Tahitian skies continue underneath and they meet up underneath, right? So we have the flatness, which is the horizon that we see above. You have the 10 skies, so like the moon will be in one sky, one star will be another sky, 10 different skies, different levels. And then would have go into the horizon below into what we call holes, right? Or what we call the abyss. So in these abyss, you have stars coming out from the east of the abyss, and then they go back into the abyss when they come back, down to the west. Alors, let's translate it in French. So, Rua, quand on disait le ciel, on pourrait dire, le Tahitien pensait que la Terre était plate, et qu'au bout de la Terre, il y avait des fossés, il y avait une fosse, en fait, des trous. Et en fait, si tu regardes le ciel, il y avait du ciel, dépendant de d'où tu es dans Polynésie, et que le ciel, après, ça continue juste en dessous. Alors, that's why it's kind of like a circular pattern. The stars will go and come back under, and so they had that kind of notion that there was this kind of cyclic kind of pattern going on, yeah? So they come out of the abyss, go into the other abyss, but they continue underneath, and then they come through. Okay, so
how to describe the Rua
yes.
is declination. If the star like Pleiades rises at 24 degrees north, that's the declination. It will also set at 24 degrees north.
Yes, exactly.
It's the hole that it comes out of. It's the hole.
Yes, it goes back into it. Yes, exactly, exactly. Voilà. Alors, encore, Rua, on disait que c'est plat, il y avait un trou, une fosse d'un côté à l'est et que les étoiles sortaient, le soleil sortait de cette fosse et qui descendait. Et quand on parle de déclinaison, par exemple, on disait tout à l'heure, elle, chez nous, elle sort du roi à 24 degrés. Et puis elle se couche à 24 degrés aussi. Ça veut dire que c'est une lignée, un ciel qu'elle parcourt et qui sort d'un trou et qui rentre dans l'autre côté. So so the passage of these stars coming out of the same place, yeah, and going into the same rua, that's what he was talking about, the pathway of stars. So that's why all these stars that have the same rua is a constellation of grouping of stars. Okay, and To Rua is the star marker, right? The star that's the most important. And that's, of course, it means great, rejoicing, right? It's a prefix to all star names. And I believe To Rua, and then Yusef. OK, alors, comme je disais, et To Rua, bien sûr, c'est l'étoile marqueur, c'est l'étoile principale qui représente tout le groupement des étoiles, le chemin ou la constellation qui représente, qui sort d'un roi, qui descend dans le même roi. On pourrait dire de l'est à l'ouest. Et To Rua, c'est ça. Okay? Et dans sa définition, c'est grande réjouissance, mais également le préfixe nominal d'étoile. Ça veut dire pas mal d'étoiles qu'on va découvrir dans les rois, ils ont tous le To Rua, les étoiles marqueurs. Hein? Voilà. OK?
So the To Rua of Manaya Kalani of Scorpio would be what we call Lehu'ula or Antares, because that's the brightest star in that constellation.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and it rises at minus 24 degrees south, and it will set at minus 20 degrees south.
Exactly. So that's the Rua. Okay. All right. So okay, and of course, talking about constellations and of course trying to get everybody into that scope of things. Okay, like in the West, Tahitians, Hawaiians, Maori identified the grouping of stars with representation, an image, right? So Matau is hook. You can see a hook, the giant fishing cage, right? The Hironui. You could see the mo'o, the shark, the atu, the bonito, which is like a tuna, small tuna, starfish, triggerfish. There's a stream, you can see birds as well, and a kite. And so this is the Tahitians' way of describing it, and we find that they're the same kind of description that we find elsewhere in Hawaii and in Maori and in Maori stars. And of course, all the bodies, fitu or celestial bodies, or aveia. These are bodies that tell us where to go. Aveia, which direction? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Alors, and so the next one is in French. Alors, comme dans l'Ouest, une constellation peut représenter bien sûr une figure. Par exemple, Matau, c'est l'hameçon, Hironui, c'est un piège à poissons, ou cerf-volant, Mao, le requin, la Bouit, voilà, l'étoile de mer, le oili, le poisson, le veille, une rivière, ou c'est un type d'oiseau. Et tous les fétus, ce sont des astres célestes qui nous guident et qui va nous aider bien sûr à naviguer sur la Terre, mais comme sur la mer. Exactement. So yeah, so we're moving on. And then
I love
so we
this
come
one.
to this.
It's
Yes,
seriously
and so
beautiful.
yeah, I know it's a lot of information, yeah. But like I said, this is great. We tried to make it so that as simplistic as possible, so we could all grasp and understand. It's quite dense as far as information, yeah. And so being able to bring this out from his thesis, and of course where he's explaining every single of the details, was quite an endeavor. Alors on nous disait encore de pouvoir le simplifier d'une façon que tout le monde peut comprendre. Encore merci Jean-Claude pour son travail, et que nous aujourd'hui nous bénéficions de cette connaissance et pouvoir bien sûr partager encore pour que voilà, si on a des futurs navigateurs qui veulent bien s'y prendre, qui comprennent déjà cette méthode. Alors, okay, so we're gonna understand a little bit more of the Rua method. Okay, alors nous allons maintenant aborder la méthode. So this is how to use the Rua. Okay, and so here I'm just going to read. This is something that to describe, of course, this method. Yeah. So as we talked about the Rua, we understand that the seas, yeah, disappear into the abyss at the horizon, and so that's the Rua, right? And so according to this, there's 10. You have 10 Rua. Okay. So the stars, the planets, the moon, the sun, and the wind. Wind is very important. Right? Wind also come out of these Rua from the east. Right? So in Tahiti, we have a dominant wind that's coming out from the east. So you can understand why we use more so east and west, and not only the sun, but also the wind, right? To create compasses, right? Which just help us, of course, understand direction, where we're going, all right? So you have, with the Rua, you have the star compass, and then you have Rua Matai, which is the wind compass, all right? Okay, and the alignment of stars which appear and disappear in the specific point of that area. Okay, ok. Voilà encore juste la traduction en français tout simplement. On avait bien compris le roi, l'horizon, il y a l'abysse, il y a voilà une fosse, un gouffre, et que bien sûr l'est à l'ouest est divisé en 10 rois. Que les étoiles, les planètes, la lune, le soleil, les vents émergent, le vent émerge de ces rois. Alors, les Polynésiens, nos ancêtres, on peut créer 2 sortes de compas. Le compas des étoiles, le roi fait tout, et le compas des vents. Et l'alignement des étoiles, ce qui apparaît et disparaît sur le même point spécifique, est également appelé roi. So we talked about the alignment, right? So, for the winds, of course, they will come out of one rua and they go to another rua. It's, a little different, right? But still used as a way of direction. But of course, stars, they would always come out from the same rua as they go back in, yeah? So that's the difference, yeah? Okay? So
in Hawaiian, we call this the mana mana. So those fingers, like the fingers mana mana, these are
okay.
temples.
Yeah.
Like at Moku Mana Mana, Kameʻeleihiwa has some fabulous pictures. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes 7, sometimes 9, sometimes 11. Like this, like the Rua. And you're measuring particular star lines that come through those areas.
Alors,
names at the same time.
alors Lilikalā disait qu'en Hawaï, on avait vu les présentations de Kameʻeleihiwa. Il parlait de manamana. Et quand on parle manamana, bien sûr, c'est comme des doigts, les manamana. Et bien sûr, c'est pour pouvoir, bien sûr, observer les étoiles, le soleil, les planètes qui se levaient par rapport à ces manamana. Et là, on voit le roi, c'est un peu le même contexte, même concept de roi, et manamana, c'est un peu la même chose. Okay? So we're moving on forward. I was like, oh my God, it's already 8:30. Okay, so the famous ruas that we know. So, okay, we had those 10, but we really understand, and I think we've gone through this a few times already, understanding rua. And so people understand the location of the rising and the setting of the sun moves on the horizon, right? So as here in Tahiti, of course, our summer is coming upon us, and that's the 21st of December, and that's when the sun is at its, I guess you could say, the northernmost in our sky. Okay, so on the scale of the Earth, it's on the so, but for us who are down in the south, it's north in the sky. So you have to understand both sides. So a view from outside on the planet looking on, of course, it will be the southernmost point, which is, of course, it follows the Tropic of Capricorn, right? But as we are in the south, it looks like the sun is further up north, right? It makes sense. because the sun stays up higher. Yes, it's okay. And so the longer passage in the sun is called Rua Rua, and you can see, right? So the sun is gonna at a certain point. Then after that, it'll move every day, it will move back down. And so we're actually moving towards the longest day. OK, and the next, voilà, alors, comme je disais tout à l'heure en français, parce que oublié. Alors, voilà, la position du soleil, quand elle se lève et se couche, le plus au nord dans notre ciel, bien sûr, sur une carte, le plus au sud. Hein, comme nous sommes au sud, c'est le plus au nord. On regarde, c'est le jour le plus long. Quand on regarde dans notre ciel, c'est ce jour-là. Hein, voilà, ça c'est Rua. Et Rua Poto, right? So Rua Poto is the opposite, right? So you guys up in the northern hemisphere, you'll see the sun, yeah? It's going to be further south. And it's the shortest distance across the sky. All right, so it's right. And of course, that'll be your winter solstice. Yeah, for us, it's in June, and you guys, it's in December. Et voilà, et puis bien sûr, à l'opposé, c'est le trajet le plus, on pourrait dire, sur le ciel, le plus, parcours le plus court, hein, dans le ciel, qui veut dire que le ciel va se lever tard et se coucher tôt, hein, dans les journées, et ça, on appelle ça le Rua Poto. Okay, et au milieu de tous les deux, c'est l'équinoxe. And in the middle, of course, is the equinox. So we have two equinoxes, right? So the 21st of September and the 21st of March.
And it's the same.
Voilà. Yes, and it's the same. Et l'équateur, et partout aussi, que dans l'hémisphère nord ou l'hémisphère, c'est toujours le même jour. Hein? Intéressant. Okay, moving on. Okay, so we have 10 Rua star paths which are known, and they can be identified with the Taurua. Right? So, for example, Taurua Faupapa is a star marker of Rua Faupapa. Of course, they'll call it Taurua Faupapa. Okay? But there are two others, so there are actually 12. Okay? Two other Rua show the path of the sun at extreme positions. So what we just showed is Rua Rua and Rua Poto. So we have to add those two Ruas. The sun has its own Rua. Okay?
Wait.
Okay?
Oh,
yeah. Alors voilà, on disait que les 10, on a identifié, hein, et puis bien sûr, ils sont identifiés grâce à l'étoile, le marqueur, le Taurua, papa, bien sûr, et qu'on ajouterait les deux Rois en plus, c'est les chemins du soleil au point extrême, hein, pour la Rua Rua et Rua Poto. Par exemple, la trajectoire de Vénus et Jupiter sont également des chemins d'étoiles, ils partagent le même nom. Okay, so remember when we said Venus and Jupiter had the same names, it's because they share the same Rua. You can see, huh? So they have the same Taurua, they are the same Taurua markers for the same passage.
Interesting. Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
That really clears things up. Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on. All right, okay. And here you have all the star markers of the Rua path star. Check it out, yeah. So Deneb, which is in the constellation of Sinus, yeah, is called, and you have the names. And you have the constellation, Betelgeuse. Okay, so you said, where's which one? Okay, so yeah, if we go Sirius, for example, Taurua Faupapa, that's what we talked about earlier, right? So Sirius in itself, that's the brightest star in our sky. It has its own Rua, and it has its own star marker, which is of course Sirius. And so he identified all of these as well. And of course, down below you have Jupiter and Venus, who share the same names. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right, it can continue.
Oh, José?
Voilà, comme je disais tout à l'heure, on a pu identifier les noms. Là, vous avez toute une liste, 12, hein, 12 Rua, 12 chemins des étoiles au soleil, avec les étoiles marqueurs pour les Taurua. De chaque constellation ou chaque chemin d'étoiles, vous avez les étoiles plus brillantes dans le ciel qui suivent ce chemin. OK? Cool. All right. And so if you're using, they use sail by aiming at the zenith star of the targeted island. So each island had a zenith star, right? So meaning when the star would rise in the east at the highest point, right, at that particular latitude, then you would know below is a particular island, right? And which makes sense, right? So if Sirius, rises up minus, south 20 degrees, right? It rises above and it reaches zenith, then we know that Tahiti and Fiji is a star, zenith star of that marker. Okay, so we know that latitude in essence. So that's what we're aiming for, right? And so what we're going to look for is, right, the zenith star is a Taurua, and it has a pathway of stars. So you look for that Rua.
Oh, for
So
sure.
you're going to keep going until you find that rua. So here's the example. Hein? Alors, on disait tout à l'heure, alors les Tahitiens voilà, visaient l'étoile zénitale d'une île pour naviguer vers l'île. Alors, si on connaît les étoiles qui représentent les îles qu'elles représentent, en fait, quand elles arrivent au plus haut de son sommet zénith, hein, il y avait toujours une étoile sur cette latitude, en fait. Et alors, on a identifié l'étoile et bien sûr, on va vers cette étoile, hein, ou jusqu'à quand, ben, tu vois que l'étoile est au plus haut sommet et c'est là que tu identifies la latitude. C'est assez intéressant. Hein? Alors, comme on dit qu'elle se lève dans le même rua, so they're going to be rising in the same rua in the east and setting in the same rua in the west, right? So positioning your va'a until you see that, where the star gets to its highest point, right? And that's when you know that you're on the latitude that you're looking for. Makes sense, hein?
Oui.
Et ça, c'est le plus facile, on pourrait dire, à trouver. Hein? C'est cette partie latitude. Hein? On utilise le soleil, même chose. Et là, bien sûr, on utilise les étoiles parce qu'ils sont toujours. Hein? So the patera use sometimes two one aligning in front and back of the va'a. Right? So understanding as it rises and as it sets as well. So yes, you see the va'a, they have, like in the front, they have these two, the part that comes in the front, and in the back as well, it kind of lifts up. Right, and so it usually lifts up to the point where there's like 17 degrees as your hand, and then you would only look at the stars routinely because after it actually won't, you can't really trace that particular latitude coming out from there. So it's once again a way of identifying. So if you see a star, then you know the rest of the stars that come afterwards. Of course, you memorize it. Et alors, comme on disait, les navigateurs, ils utilisaient des fois des étoiles en avant et à l'arrière, hein, pour déterminer dans quelle roi tu te trouves, en fait. OK? Et voilà. Et comme ça, tu peux à l'est ou à l'ouest, et devant le vent, il y a un moment où ça monte, et puis derrière aussi, dans la coque, hein, elles sont faites en sorte que c'est une élévation, pour dire, de 17 degrés, on dit quand les étoiles se lèvent jusqu'à 17 degrés, et après ça, on utilise tout le temps, on cherche la prochaine étoile. Hein, et c'est la même chose à l'arrière, on regarde, identifier l'étoile. Okay, so really important to know the stars that rise and follow them as they set, but marking their position in the rua at sunrise and as they rise and as they set. Alors, encore, identifier le roi avec les taux de roi et regarder là où il se lève et il se couche. Très important pour après identifier le roi. OK?
Okay.
Moving on. All right, so the Tahitian sky was divided into several lineups of stars, as we mentioned, right? But that east and west direction, so there's a better view, I guess you could say, a nice illustration. Mm-hmm. And these alignments, of course, can be compared to parallel lines and latitudes of modern maps. So the context of I and understanding that is pretty cool. The Va'a is aligned with the stars, less than 20 degrees above the horizon, as we mentioned earlier. And of course, the stars would go east to west. And so you would stay in the Rua as much as possible if you know the island that you're searching for is in that Rua. I think. So that's navigation to east to west. Alors, ça, c'est bien sûr la navigation d'est en ouest, plus simple. Bien sûr, on a le soleil et bien sûr, on a toutes les étoiles. Et les étoiles, bien sûr, si tu connais les étoiles qui sont des étoiles zénitales de certaines îles, alors tu vas chercher ces étoiles qui sont des taurois et les garder dans le même roi là où ils se lèvent. Et donc, on pourrait dire la latitude, on appelle, qui est bien sûr les parallèles. Hein, aux parallèles qu'on retrouve sur les cartes, les latitudes qu'on retrouve. C'est la même chose, on trouvait ça bien sûr sur le roi. OK? All right, next. Cool. And of course, you have that, the planets already having their own trajectory as well. So the trajectory along the sky, ecliptic path, of course, and it's like a rua, in a sense, it's a celestial path. So two planets and one planet and one star can be used as markers, yeah, for this particular rua as well. And so the planet's paths. Hein. Et voilà encore, on utilise également les planètes hein, qui avaient leur chemin particulier, hein, comme je disais, ils ne suivaient pas les autres étoiles, mais qui peut être utilisé comme un chemin d'étoiles, le rua, comme je disais. Et voilà, tu peux utiliser une planète, une étoile, mais hein, ce sont des repères dans le ciel, afin bien sûr de se retrouver sur l'océan ou sur la Terre, à quelle latitude. Tu peux également utiliser les planètes. All right? Cool. And yeah. And so that's it. Next.
Oh,
Yes, okay, we're gonna get through the Po. I know, it's like, oh, okay, real quick, okay, so now we understand east-west, okay? Now the hardest part is understanding north-south, okay? So that's what we're gonna do. Po. Alors, on comprend maintenant l'est en ouest, et maintenant, c'est mieux comprendre le Po et l'ouest. Alors, we know that in Tahitian mythology, there's 10 pillars which holds up the sky, all right? And you can see at the end of these pillars, you have these stars, right? And these are called ana, okay? And they were set up so that you could identify using the stars that are fixed in the south and the north. You have a line going from south to north or north to south using these po. Okay, alors, in French, alors on parlait bien sûr des piliers, des cieux. Le po qu'on identifie, on en a 10. Et en utilisant ces pots, on peut récupérer un genre une ligne longitude avec des étoiles fixes du nord et les étoiles bien sûr fixes du sud, on pourrait dire les étoiles du sud qui ne bougent pas autant. Et on aligne ça sur ce chemin, on pourrait dire le chemin des pôles. Et c'est ana, ces étoiles, le marqueur les plus brillantes, on pourrait dire à l'extrémité des pôles. Ben voilà, c'est au zénith, on pourrait dire. Et là, tu fais une ligne. And so there, in a nutshell, that's pretty much how you want. And so they could have a star that could be also a pole. It could be a To Rua, but it could also be an ana. And so Betelgeuse, for example, is one of them, right? So, all right, alors, les poles is recognized by its shiniest star, the ana. For example, Ana Varu is Betelgeuse. It's the most visible star, specific set of stars aligned in the Po Nhora, right? And so that gives you also an explanation that so you not only use the Rua stars, the To Rua, but you could also use the star as far as Ana to give you the Po constellations in the north and south direction, right? And planets can also be classified as ana, like they are in To Rua. So they move faster than the stars, but it has the axis from east to west, but it can use also the axis from north and south. Voilà. Et bien sûr, on me disait in French, yeah, alors les Po, bien sûr, reconnus bien sûr par les ana, qui peuvent être bien sûr des étoiles. Comme je le disais tout à l'heure, ils peuvent être To Rua et bien sûr ana. Ana Varu, c'est Betelgeuse, et l'étoile la plus visible du chemin des étoiles qu'on appelle Po Nhora. Et les planètes également peuvent être classifiées comme ana, comme ils sont dans la méthode To Rua, et qui se déplacent plus rapidement que les étoiles là, sur l'axe est-ouest. C'est donc possible d'utiliser les autres étoiles sur l'axe nord et sud. Okay, I hope I didn't lose yourself. Okay, so moving on forward. So here's an explanation, of course, of how they're used. And all the stars, of course, that are used as Po. And so remember Antares, Scorpio, as you talked about earlier. Okay, that's an ana, and we know that it's a Po Mua, right? It not only is one of the important pillars that for the Tahitian dome, of course, but it's also an important pillar or important star or constellation, yeah, in regards to our calendar as well as we're talking about. So here are the ana that exist with the Po. Okay, so we just ana mua is Po Mua, ana muri is Po muri, ana roto Po roto, ana tipu ana heu heu po, and further on, and Betelgeuse is ana varu, as you know. So, and Polaris, we even have a name for Polaris, even though the Tahitians didn't see Polaris, they knew it existed, and you can see it on the bottom there. Yes. Okay. So maybe they got that information when they came up to Hawaii, of course, I'm sure. Alors, on disait tout à l'heure, alors tu as 10 ana qui bien sûr représentent 10 Po. Alors, Antares de la constellation Scorpio s'appelle Po Mua. Alors, tu as Po Muri, Po Roto, et jusqu'en bas, tu as également Polaris. Et pourtant, on ne le voit pas de l'œil nu ici dans le sud, parce qu'elle est au-dessus de l'horizon. Mais on avait également un nom pour ce ana, Anania. Right? Po Fa'arava'aira. Fa'arava'aira. Okay. All right, so that's a name for Polaris. That's le nom de Polaris. Okay, cool.
Great.
And then, yeah. And so how do you do it? So ancient Tahitians aligned their va'a with the Po to travel north and south, forward or backwards. Yeah? The Po is located by its shiniest marker star. So looking for the shiniest marker star. and you look. Okay. Moving forward.
En français?
Voilà, alors voilà, en utilisant, bien sûr, on regarde le nord et sud et on cherche bien sûr les pôles, qui bien sûr les étoiles Anna, qui vont bien sûr décrire voilà, ce chemin, ou dire le groupement d'étoiles qui nous donne un peu la direction du nord et du sud. OK? All right, moving forward.
Yes.
Okay, and with all of that, this is a wonderful work by Jean-Claude, and you can determine, and as you move forward, you can see all the Rua and all the stars that are in the Rua, and all the pole and all the stars that are in the pole.
Color
Okay,
coded.
so if you move forward, then you're going to see, alors ça c'est une carte visuelle, on voit la Voie lactée, bien sûr, c'est ce genre de U, et on voit au niveau des déclinaisons sur le côté, latitude et nord, longitude, les différents ruas. So ça, c'est les ruas. That's the different ruas. And all the stars within this are the stars that are in that path of the rua. You can see that. And if
Now, for all of you who are watching this evening, there will be an exam at the end.
Voilà. Alors voilà, tout ce qui est en rouge et vert, ben, dans ces couloirs, on pourrait dire, dans ces chemins, vous allez toutes les étoiles des rois, et voici les pôles from north to south.
Right.
So understanding where the north and the south, we know in the north we have Polaris as a fixed star, and in the south we have the Southern Cross, which is pretty much fixed as well. These are kind of identifiers, and looking for the Ana that go between them to align the three. Huh? That's what you're looking for as far as pole going from north to south, right? Okay, and the next one you can see, I guess you can, in a better way, the compass in itself and the latitudes that they come out. So this is Rua. Huh?
This is very much like the 10 skies of Kane chart that we see from the Tuamotus.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we just
Alors là, vous avez les 12 ruas. You can count. These are the 12 rua that exist in our sky. And the stars that go through these different latitudes can tell you where you are latitude-wise. Right? So they rise in this rua and set in this rua, then you know you're in latitude 10 or latitude 20. Yeah. Voilà. Bien sûr, avec ça, on voit un peu plus clairement, voilà, si le soleil se lève sur la droite et se couche vers la gauche, il y a le chemin que les étoiles suivent. Si vous trouvez ce chemin d'étoiles, ben vous savez à quelle latitude. Et voilà une carte un peu plus pour vous identifier un peu plus où c'est. Alors, on peut trouver bien sûr Hawaii. We can see Hawaii in the north, and you can see the rua that's for that, and the stars that indicate, where this island is, right? Voilà, par exemple, voici, on a les différents taux, les différentes étoiles marqueurs pour les latitudes qui, bien sûr, identifient l'île où on se trouve, par exemple. Yeah? So this is another way of seeing.
It's quite amazing what you've done, what this chart with that Jean-Claude made, because when we look at this in Hawaii, we measure Makali'i here at the Ruapoto, the solstice for Tropic of Cancer. And then we measure the Lehua, in Scorpio here for the Uaroa solstice. And then of course in the star in the belt of Orion for the equator. Yeah.
Alors, je disais, Lilikalā faisait bien sûr une comparaison au niveau de comment eux identifient un peu les constellations et les rois par rapport à leurs étoiles, là où ils sont, bien sûr. Sur cette latitude de Hawaï, Ruapoto, on voit Matari'i. Sur la latitude du Scorpio, on voit le roi, un roi qui est sur cette carte. Et bien sûr, à l'équateur, c'est bien sûr la statue d'Orion. Hein? Voilà. OK, cool. Yeah, and then, so I think we're going to leave it there because...
But I want everyone to give a big round of applause to Hironui for doing such a fabulous job. Now, Hironui, if you were teaching this in the university, you would take a whole semester, 15 weeks. So.
Yeah, of course, I know. And I just, like I said, I try to put a presentation together to make it as concise as possible, because it's very, very difficult for those who don't know the sky or don't understand anything to try to grasp the visual aspect, 3D, I guess you could say, and trying to put it in a way that is as simplest as possible. And it takes some time. I mean, like, even I honestly, sometimes it took a long time for me to really grasp, okay, what is declination? Okay, what is that? And so try to put it all together in a way. That's the challenge. And of course, I thank Jean-Claude that, we, like I said, was able to put this. And of course, I was, I did, I helped as well in this process. And so, because I teach I don't teach university, I teach mostly high school and even middle school, and try to at least introduce these concepts. And that's important for at this level. Of course, you want to get into the details and stuff like that. We can go into calculations, we can estimate, we can actually try to test. And that's something that Jean-Claude really wanted, okay, this is a method, this is a hypothetical method. This is a way of doing it. And can it work? That's the whole thing, We have to try to see if it does, thank goodness Nainoa and Papa Mao, they had many, many years to try to put it in a way that it could be taught, in essence, right? And that's microdeletion method. And so Jean-Claude's wish was to see, okay, how can we do it and how can we teach it, and that's a big challenge, right? Alors, comme je disais tout à l'heure, le plus grand challenge, c'est d'essayer d'enseigner cette méthode, d'enseigner tout ça d'une façon claire et nette et compréhensible pour la majorité des gens qui ne sont pas aussi passionnés du ciel que certaines d'autres personnes, quoi. Et l'état, bien sûr, le souhait que Jean-Claude avait toujours, c'est que, OK, il y a cette méthode qui existe, qui peut-être pas la méthode parfaite, mais qui devrait être expérimentée, qui devait être, voilà, il faut le tester pour voir comment ça marche, quels sont les ajustements à faire. Et en fait, c'était son souhait que, je l'espère, les sociétés de navigation traditionnelles vont suivre, vont construire sur cette recherche que Jean-Claude a fait, et que à leur tour peuvent également peut-être tester et peut-être proposer quelque chose que Papa Mao et Nainoa Thompson ont fait pour les Hawaïens, et peut-être qu'on pourrait le faire également pour les Tahitiens. So there, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. And if you have any questions, not a problem. Once again,
but we don't have time for questions this evening.
I know.
We're gonna get home before the curfew.
Yes, I gotta go. So once again, merci encore à Lilikalā et tous ceux. Encore une fois, merci à Jean-Claude de m'avoir enseigné tout ça et de m'avoir donné cette opportunité d'enseigner aux enfants de Tahiti, de la Polynésie et de Hawaï, partout que mes voyages m'emportent, que je puisse partager ces connaissances qui est vraiment à la base sa recherche de sa vie et que je construis par-dessus ses épaules. So once again, just very thankful, Jean-Claude, for teaching this to me and allowing me to share this with the next generation. And of course, I'm standing on his shoulders as he is standing on those who came before him. And so we hope, once again, that this knowledge will be shared and, of course, continued in the research of understanding our ancestors a little bit better. So thank you very much.
Recorded forever.
Yes, yes. Okay, merci beaucoup. So I have to go. I'm really sorry.
And I'll finish up the closing.
Okay.
Off you go.
Okay. Allez, merci beaucoup, Nana. Bonne soirée. Bye bye, everybody.
We still have a curfew in Tahiti. So I want to say thank you to Haururu, but I also want to say thank you and mahalo nui to Kalani, Simeona, Lehuluwai Maka Meleisea, and Kavika Aspili, who are the students who are helping produce this show, especially Kalani and Lehuluwai Maka. Kavika is doing transcriptions of these shows. And so soon we'll be able to have all of this on the website for all of you to see whenever you'd like to. I want to thank, of course, Auntie Gladys Brandt for making this all happen. I want to thank Makakua Kalani Center for Hawaiian Studies and Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge for helping host this chair. Of course, our French translator extraordinaire, Hironui Bouit of Tahiti Nui, and the person who set all of this up for us, Malia Nobrega-Olivera, who is our technical producer, who's training all of us to work on these things. Thank you to Facebook, On Facebook, we have Hawaii Nuyakia, we have Kanayo Kana, we have Oiwi TV, and we'll tell you all about it on Instagram. So we're getting there. Of course, if you want to answer some questions and tell us how to do it better, you can go to this website, bit.ly/Brantival. And don't forget, you're going to see Lea Nui Nui that is being run by Malia Nobrega-Olivera for all these fabulous things about Hawaiian culture. If you don't care about the rest of the Polynesian, fine, go to Lea Nui Nui. You're going to see all these things about Hawaiian culture. But eventually, you're going to see how similar Hawaiian culture is with Polynesian culture. All right. And then, if you like this series and you want to give us some money, please do so. Go to uhfoundation.org. Gladys Brent Endowed Chair. The money goes in there. They take good care of it. They give us a little bit every year to pay for various things, and it's going to last forever. But it'll last longer, and we can do more if you help us out with doing all these things. Finally, next week, we're going to have Papa Hefara, who's also known as Eve Dudut. He is a member and a former president of Haururu Association. You know, Haururu, that one of the founding members is Jean-Claude and Teriʻioteraʻi. And then we have also Papa Hefara and many others who are, we've seen Libor is a member of Haururu. Of course, we have ATUA boards from Mo'area, a member of Haururu. So many wonderful people keeping the Tahitian culture and language alive. He's going to tell us, Papa Hefara will tell us about the chants and the songs they use in the ceremonies for the Matari'i Nia, the Pleiades is rising. So folks, I'd love to have you join us next time. If you have more questions, write to me, Lilikalā, Lilikala, at hawaii.edu. And I may take a while before I get back to you because I have so many students, but I will absolutely try to answer all of your questions. And that I say good night. Aloha. Aloha po malie. Ayorana. Aloha.